Hi, Care Pioneers. Welcome back to another live stream Tuesday. And I acknowledge you for all your hard work and for your resilience and in your unique role with your loved one. So I just wanted to start off with that. But today we're going to talk about a topic that many of you have shared with me and some of your struggles, specifically about dealing with difficult dementia behaviors. So today we're diving into the general principles of managing these situations. Future sessions, I'll be discussing specific behaviors like repetitive behaviors or questions, aggression, refusal to shower. We'll go into all of those, but today is just some general principles. And I wanted to say that this is really a universal approach because even if your loved one does not have dementia and hasn't been diagnosed with dementia, the strategies that I'm going to talk about today can still be very helpful. It's really about understanding your own feelings and your own responses so that you can respond effectively and also what your loved one might be experiencing. So the steps I'm going to give you today, although your responses may be different, because if you're on listening to this and you don't have a loved one with dementia or some sort of brain challenge, these steps are still very helpful. So let's get to it. When we talk about common dementia behaviors, and that's what I want to talk about, first I want to just identify who's impacted most by this. And I can tell you it's both you and your loved one. So it's really about how you're thinking and how you're responding that can make a huge difference, because they may be upset or they can't express what they really want. And then you respond and then in kind that you're upset or frustrated, and they feel that. And it just makes the situation worse, even though it's normal to have those feelings. So some of the things that you might want to check in with yourself right in the very beginning is about safety. Is your loved one safe? And if yes, is it more about you than about them? Just something to think about. Or is your loved one happy, or do they seem happy? And if they're happy, maybe it's more about you than them. So that's just something to think about. And sometimes just a simple shift in perspective can change everything. And it can be a relationship revival, a relationship renewal, because sometimes all these behaviors, they get in the way of really seeing the person and what you had before and what you want to have now. It just makes that relationship so much worse, rather than being able to enjoy your loved one, whether it be a significant other, your husband, your wife, your mom, your dad, your adult child, whatever it may be. And then the last thing is the impact on you is that self-criticism and being so harsh on yourself or ourselves. I know, because I've been there and I help my clients with this, because the self-criticism ultimately doesn't help. So we're going to work on shifting that as well. Being kind to yourself, being your own best friend. Let's talk about some of these behaviors. What are we talking about when we talk about difficult behaviors? Well, some of them are repetitive behaviors and asking the same question over and over again. Where's my chair? Where's my chair? Where's my chair? Where's my chair? It could be that resistance to bathing, showering, dressing, toileting, even though the bathing and the showering and the brushing the teeth, even though they stink or it looks like their teeth are going to fall out of their mouth. Maybe eating challenges, and this is a big one for some of my clients. Their loved one forgets to eat, or they don't want to eat, or they eat, but then they forget that they've eaten and they say to you, I'm hungry. I haven't eaten anything yet today, right? Or they refuse to participate in tasks. It could be anything, or there's some agitation or aggression there. Don't touch me. Or I had one client whose significant other, every time she tried stepping out of the room, would go, "Don't leave me, don't leave me." And then he would follow her and get aggressive. Or it could be the paranoia and suspicion. Someone stole my money. Someone stole my pocketbook. Someone took my whatever. Or it could be rummaging through items. Some of my clients have loved ones who their loved ones wander, or they have sundowning. They get more confused as the day goes further and further along, and their loved one may start to take things out of closets, out of drawers, and before you know it, you have a mess. Or it could be even unexpected sexual behaviors such as undressing, and certainly undressing in environments where you don't want them to address, fondling themselves. All of those things can be very difficult. So when these things happen, how does it make you feel? Quite honestly, it is so natural to feel frustrated, angry, sad, exhausted, overwhelmed, resentful, whatever it is, fearful. But often it's our own inner thoughts that make it worse, because sometimes we think, my goodness, why is this happening? Are they doing this on purpose? Are they doing this just to make me miserable? Why are they acting like a child? Why are they acting like this? And so we end up feeding into the behavior instead of diffusing it. So that's a big one. And we'll go into those specific behaviors in other videos. Today, I want to go through some general principles. By the way, if any of those scenarios resonated to you or another scenario, please just write it in comments so that I know to address it in subsequent videos, because this is for you. Okay, so here's some general principles. First, I'm going to go through don'ts of dealing with challenging or difficult behaviors. The first and biggest one is do not argue, because you can't rationalize. You cannot rationalize with them because their brain is damaged. Those synapses and neurons are not working correctly. Their brains are shrinking. And in many instances, they're in what I call the emotional or critter brain, where they may not even can verbalize what they're thinking, or maybe even they don't know what they're thinking. They just know what they're feeling, and they can't verbalize that as well. So they're in fight. They're fighting you, or they're trying to get away, or they're refusing, just going, I'm not doing anything. So explaining won't help, correcting them makes them feel worse, or judging them doesn't help you or them because it gets you off track. So those are the biggest don'ts. Here's some of the do's. The first and biggest one is, and this can happen no matter what, no matter if you're in the middle of the situation, is to step back and pause. Take that break, because also we're in that critter emotional brain rather than our rational brain many times too, or we've racked our brains trying to figure it out and we can't anymore, and we're so frustrated we go into that critter brain or that emotional brain, or what I'll call our limbic brain. That is a more primitive brain. That's when we get into our knee-jerk reactions instead of stepping back and pausing. What's really going on here, and asking ourselves that. The second do is to, after that, stay calm. If you need a moment or two or three or five or 10 to respond, take it. Even if you need to walk away briefly, if it's necessary, and just let your loved one know that. Otherwise, it can make it worse. And the biggest one I want you to remember is to focus on the outcome, not how you're getting there just yet, but the outcome, what you want the ending to be. Again, remember, your loved one is mostly trying to communicate something to you and they don't know how. It's their discomfort, their anxiety, their confusion. Their brain's damaged. We talked about that. Their critter brain, their limbic system. So imagine, here's what it's like. Imagine you go to a foreign country and you're lost. You feel lost. You don't know the language, you don't know the customs, you don't know where you are. You can't communicate. And that's often how our loved ones, especially with dementia, whatever form of dementia they have, that's how they feel. They feel totally lost and confused. And what's coming at them and what you're saying, they don't understand. And so it's a trigger for them for that fight, flight, or freeze response of that limbic brain. And so just remember how you would feel if you were plopped somewhere and you didn't know anything and you couldn't communicate and you were totally lost. And the other do I'm going to say to you is please, please have self-compassion, because even if you don't respond exactly correctly in the way you wanted to, or had hoped you would, remind yourself you're only human. You are doing the best you can. And in the scheme of things, this quote mistake, really, it's here and it's gone. It's just gone. It's gone. So be kind to yourself. So now I want to go into the practicalities of, okay, so I've told you this. Now what do I do? What in the world am I going to do? Right? So there is a four-step process that I teach, and it's relatively simple, uh, but it takes time to understand how to do it. And I walk my clients through this. And so some of them you can't, if you're not used to doing it, you won't be able to do immediately on the spot, boom, 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 every time. But the more you do it and the more you practice it, the easier it gets and the more secondhand it just comes naturally. Here's step number one. And step number one, you can do no matter what. No matter what, even if you're in the middle of the situation, in the heat of it. I've already talked about it. The first is step back and pause, because you need to give your rational mind a chance to catch up with that emotional critter brain that will just pounce, that knee-jerk reaction. And again, I've already said, ask yourself, what's happening here? And how am I feeling? That's the first thing to identify, because if you're just coming from that place of feeling and not recognizing that's where you are, you're just reacting rather than responding. Here's step two. I call it understanding the ABCs of behavior. What you're really becoming now is a dementia detective to figure out what these behaviors mean. And if your loved one doesn't have dementia, you're a caregiver PI, private investigator, private eye. Okay, that's what you're doing. And first, you need to understand the ABCs of dementia. So the first is, and I help my clients figure all of this out and go through these steps, and sometimes behavior by behavior, because you can't, it's not one size fits all for each behavior. And sometimes what worked yesterday for this specific behavior doesn't work today because there's a different trigger. And that's the first one, the antecedent, or what happened before the behavior. Were there any triggers? Maybe your loved one is reacting to something that reminds them of a past experience. So, yeah, that's a possibility. The second is of the ABCs. The A was antecedent. The B is the actual behavior, looking at the behavior objectively without your judgment and story. Remember, your loved one is operating from a more primitive part of your brain. So it may not always be that they're just trying to annoy you. And then the C of the ABCs of behavior is consequence. What happened afterwards? What was your response? What did they say or do? And what did you say or do? And did it escalate or de-escalate the situation? Did it work or didn't it work? So those are some of the things to just understand. Step one was actually, saying, whoa, step back and pausing. Step two is the ABCs of behavior, seeing if there are any triggers. And by the way, with the antecedent, if you do identify triggers, then you sometimes can stop that behavior before it even starts. So example, one of my clients, when she went to bed, her loved one did not like the door closed, but she had somebody living with her at the time to help her take care of her loved one, and she wanted privacy. So when she closed the door, he would start screaming, "Don't close the door!" So she knew that was a trigger. So when she went into the room, she had a compromise. She said to her loved one, "Okay, I'm not closing the door. I am going to leave it slightly opened so you can get out." And I'm going to describe that behavior a little bit more later on. So, but that was, you know, anticipating the trigger, addressing it beforehand, and never giving the behavior a chance to get going. We talked about the actual behavior and then the consequence. Now, the step three. So we talked about step back and pause, the ABCs of behavior. And now is the brainstorm of putting yourself in your shoes. Ultimately, I'm going to repeat this again. Ultimately, it's about them and how they're feeling when we deal with their behaviors, not what we're thinking. Okay, let me repeat that. It's about your loved one and how they're feeling when we're looking at changing behaviors, not about how we're feeling. Our behavior about how we're feeling needs to change too, but we need to put ourselves in their shoes. We need to try to feel what they're feeling. And imagine just walking in their shoes and being in their body, you know, putting your fingers in their fingers, putting your toes in their toes, putting your feet in their feet, putting your lungs in their lungs, putting your heart in their heart, and feeling that body, okay, and feeling them coming from their perspective. And now, with that, the brainstorm is maybe coming up with alternative reasons for the behavior. Maybe it wasn't that they're just trying to make me miserable. Okay, or what's wrong with them, or why are they being like this, or they're just trying to get back at me, or they hate me, or whatever it may be. Maybe that is true, but most cases, it's not. It's our belief. So that's the third, is brainstorm. Now, once you've brainstormed, then you can start to respond. That is the fourth step. So based on one of those alternatives, pick one of them and then pick it, and then we can start to respond. And what you know of their background and their likes and their dislikes and triggers will also determine the response. So it's not, again, not a one size fits all. Here are the three main steps to responding. First, validate and connect with them, and then distract, and then redirect. Okay, I'm going to go through them. Validate or connect. Okay, if you're not validating their feelings and connecting with them, they're not feeling seen or heard or felt, even if they can't verbalize it themselves. So, for example, I had a client she used to take her mom in the car on errands with her. But every time they drove up to their house, she would refuse to get out of the car. It was a fight to the finish. She claimed it wasn't her home. She said, "I want to. This is not my home. I want to go home." So the validate and connect with them is, "Mom, I hear you. You really want to go home, right? You love your home. You want to go home, right? Okay, that's the connecting, that they're being seen and heard and not ignored. Then the distraction comes in, and maybe it's something that's enjoyable. Her mom was a caregiver or a caretaker or a stay-at-home mom all her life, and she did the errands for the entire family. So she loved doing the shopping and going on errands. So we had her say, Mom, you know what? I have one more stop and errand to do. Let's go do it, and then we'll go home. And that way she got her into the home, and then she distracted her, right, with something that she liked to do. But how to get her now out of the car, the redirect, she just said, let's go, Mom, and went to the other side and just opened up the car door like, like it was nothing. And her mom got out and just went into the house. And then they started doing other things. Okay. Other examples are, I've had one, I talked about the uh, the significant other who did not like the door closed. He was a police officer. He was a retired police officer. And it turned out, when she really sat down and thought about it, and we went through the steps in detail, that he didn't like the feeling of being entrapped. When you're a cop, you don't want to be trapped anyplace. It's dangerous, it's unsafe. And that was going on for her. So when she left the door ajar, I like saying that, door ajar, it helped both of them feel more secure. She, for her, it wasn't all the way open. For him, it wasn't closed. What about repetitive behavior? Another one of my clients, every time her loved one walked into their bedroom, he said, where's my chair? Where's my chair? Where's my chair? And so she would say, you miss your chair, right? And then she would say, so that was the validation. And then she would say, you know, you know what? I know you love your chair so much. I'm having it cleaned. I'll bring it back later today or tomorrow, whatever. Let's get your favorite slippers. So that was distract and redirect to where she wanted him to go. Okay. And that worked for her. By the way, a lot of people feel very uncomfortable in quote lying, and I'll say in quotes, lying to their loved one. We have to remember that it's what I call compassionate lying. This is not about your reality. This is their reality. And so it's not lying to them because it's their reality, not yours. In fact, with this particular quote, where's the chair in my room? He, in all their marriage, but they'd only been married for 6 years, they never had a chair in their room. It must have been from long ago, some chair that he loved. And she would replace it with other chairs, but he didn't like those chairs. So what we finally did was he went with her to the secondhand store, and they got a chair that he loved. And that was the end of that. Okay. Um, so those are things. And so those are the 4 steps. And I'm going to add a fifth, again, is that self-compassion, to stay positive, to know, because it's so frustrating, to know that you are doing the best that you possibly can given the circumstances on the moment, so that you're not, even if you're feeling guilty afterwards or ashamed you did that, or you blame others or whatever it may be, give yourself some space to be kind with yourself, because that also gives you space to investigate and be that dementia detective. Otherwise, it keeps you in a very small place. So, that's the end, but I just want to let you know I've developed some new tools and resources for you on your caregiving journey. And that self-compassion is to, sometimes we need some affirmations for ourselves on a daily basis to keep that positivity up, or to allow ourselves to feel what we're feeling and still move through the day. So I have something now that I've developed called a new resource called the Empowered Caregiver. And it's what I'll call a card deck, and it's a new resource to help you stay calm, positive, and grounded in your caregiving role. It's digital, and I had it on an app called Deckable, and it's a free app. You can get it from your app store. And I wanted to make it accessible anytime so that you didn't have to carry any papers or any hard copy card deck with you. And each card has an affirmation, like I'm doing the best I can. I am enough. Those kinds of things. I deserve to care for me. So there's an affirmation, an explanation of what that affirmation means, some very short practical action steps that you can do on the spot, and there's a 30-second or less video for me I from me, and I will put the link in the comments, so that if you'd like to get it, you can. I've also developed a guidebook, and it's called A Caregiver's Guide to Understanding and Managing Dementia Behaviors, because it's been such a big issue with most of my clients. And it's a step-by-step guide to help you respond to specific behaviors in a way that works for both you and for your loved one. So, if you need support in any of this or on your caregiving journey, or you want to walk through the steps of being a dementia detective or a caregiver PI, or any other issue you may be having with your caregiving journey, book a free discovery call with me. I'll put the link to my schedule so that you can do it at your convenience. And let's work together to figure out solutions tailored to your needs and your loved one's needs. I'll see you next time.